The president of Mozambique, Filipe Nyusi, met with leaders of political parties in that country. The leader of the official opposition, who is in Europe, did not join the meeting. Meanwhile, it's business as usual as Mozambicans are preparing to celebrate the new year. The meeting of political parties in Mozambique was aimed at finding a solution to the current political and security situation in the country. President Nyusi called the meeting that was attended by all parties. While the opposition parties are still adamant that they will not accept the results, this meeting is seen as a better way of handling the impasse. Mozambicans will celebrate the new year after the protests were called off until next week, Monday. Meanwhile, challenges of supply chains and fuel shortages have affected ordinary people, with food prices soaring. Well, for more on this, let's bring in SABC News International editor Sophie Mukwena. Thanks very much for joining us, Sophie. So President Filipe Nyusi met with the leaders of political parties. What was on the agenda, and do we know what some of the outcomes were?
Well, on the agenda was the current situation in Mozambique post-elections. As you know, that the opposition parties have rejected the Electoral Commission announcement and later also rejected the Constitutional Council confirmation of the results. But I'm told that President Nyusi indicated that there was no need for mediation. As I pointed out the previous day, he believes that everything is under control and they will be able to handle any eventuality. On the side of the opposition, the parties indicated that they still are not accepting or going to accept the results. But they spoke about how they will come up with contributions or some way forward in terms of what needs to be done. Now, clearly, when you listen to those two arguments, on the other side, you have Filipe Nyusi, the outgoing president, who is Renamo, saying there's no need for mediation. It speaks to the fact that he wants Frelimo to continue to lead. On the other hand, when the oppositions are saying they are not going to accept the results, but they'll come with some suggestions, it means they want mediation and they want some sort of an arrangement. And therefore, you can still see that there's still no agreement. On the other hand, you have also Venancio Mondlane, who was not part of this. Some people are saying it's because he's abroad. Others are saying he was not invited. It looks like him being outside the country is putting him in a position where he is likely going to be isolated. And I'll tell you why. When you look at his background, he has been in different political parties, moving from one political party to the other. Even this one, now that he's leading this coalition, he was just parachuted to the leadership. And clearly the parties where he comes from, maybe they are also not so happy about him because, remember, now he is leading the party that is the official opposition, removing Renamo. So behind the scenes, you'll have those concerns. So him being away is creating a vacuum, and then that is why perhaps the party was represented, but not him joining the talk. So that's the situation right now in Mozambique.
Yeah. So if mediation is needed, how can countries like South Africa then intervene without seemingly undermining the sovereignty of Mozambique? And then on the other hand, you've got countries like Zimbabwe, which facilitated a meeting around Mozambique, and people criticizing Zimbabwe to say, well, they're not exactly a great moral authority on leadership and taking care of their people and following democratic processes. So how can they mediate such a situation? So what needs to happen? Because if left as it is, obviously it's going to be quite a problem, and it means it also affects South Africa and the South African economy, as we will have Mozambicans, more of them, coming into the country to try and eke out a living as well.
You are correct. South Africa is in a very difficult situation because you are correct. This is an autonomous state. This is an independent country with its rule, its constitution, its leadership. And therefore, South Africa cannot dictate what needs to happen in Mozambique. South Africa can facilitate the talks or mediate if invited by all stakeholders. Now, with Frelimo not happy with that intervention, it becomes a problem. On the other hand, you have the opposition who are saying, because they've been calling on South Africa to do something. Therefore, I think South Africa will have to be very, very careful so that it's not seen as a bully or playing a brother bullying syndrome on the continent. And you know that there's that view in some quarters on the continent, and therefore South Africa has to be very, very careful. On the other hand, with Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa being the chair of organ, the leader of SADC, you are correct. There are issues, particularly from the opposition side, in relation to Zimbabwe. But Frelimo would be comfortable in relation to Zimbabwe. Now, that's the issue. And also, you don't want South Africa to be seen as undermining SADC and the organ on politics defense, the Troika led by Tanzania. So that's a very difficult one. But behind the scenes, I think South Africa will have to look at this issue and find a way not to be seen as bullying Mozambique. On the other hand, the ANC as the governing party, the friend of Frelimo, will have to speak to its employees in government to say you must be sensitive to this matter, because I'm told Frelimo has already raised this matter with some people within the ANC. So you don't want that situation. But the reality is, as you pointed out, the economy, the movement of people, goods and services will be affected. And South Africa is going to be on a receiving end. And maybe that is why South Africa had to act, because everybody was shouting, what is Ramaphosa doing? What is South Africa doing? Forgetting that Mozambique is not a 10th province of South Africa. It's not KwaZulu-Natal. It's not Limpopo. It's not Mpumalanga. It's not Free State. It's not Western Cape. It's not Northern State. It's not Gauteng. It's an independent country.
Indeed, indeed. Sophie, thank you so much for your time and insights there. That was Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International Editor.